Ladies and gents, welcome and thank you for joining us and sharing your Wednesday evening with us. You've joined the Vertical and Horizontal Integration Explained webinar, and for those of you that have been around GP training for quite some time, it won't be unfamiliar to you. Those of you that have successfully integrated will know some of the fantastic opportunities that are available to practices that go through this, and also some of the challenges that you may face. And those that are yet to take this on, it's a great opportunity to talk to Sam Hurd tonight, who has been through it all himself as a long-term GP supervisor and regular stalwart in the Northern Territory. So a little bit about GPSA before we get started. GPSA is the national representative body that unites GP supervisors. The organisation is about making sure that GP supervisors are respected, recognised and rewarded for the work that you do in delivering over 90% of GP training. We're the voice of GP supervisors, making sure that the next generation of family doctors can actually train and become quality GPs in the future. And the majority of our work is to lobby and work with relevant health sector policymakers and representatives. We do this, of course, with respect to the liaison work that we do with our members, and you will have recognised that as a member through the surveys that we ask you to complete and the webinars that you certainly enjoy. Membership is absolutely free. And as another piece of our work is negotiating the national terms and conditions between supervisors and registrars on behalf of the supervisor cohort. That's done every 2 years, and we've just completed that, and I'm sure a number of you have come into contact with the national terms and conditions for the employment of registrars. Now, a little bit of housekeeping tonight. You will notice that you're currently muted, and that is because we've had 65 people register to participate in tonight's session. As you can imagine, having that number of people trying to all speak over each other to get their question in would make it a little bit difficult to manage and a little bit difficult to hear. So we've given Sam primary access to talk and so that you can see him tonight, and you'll be able to ask questions throughout the session just by using the chat box. Now, the chat box is located in the bottom left of your screen. You'll see a number of people have already had the opportunity to put where they're from. Please make sure that you do check that out. And any questions that we have that pop up, we will colour those red. And once they have been responded to, we will then change those to green. Okay, if you're needing at any stage if you're finding that the internet connection in your particular location is struggling with the amount of bandwidth that this particular webinar is using, a really great opportunity is to turn off the video. Now, if you look at Sam's image there at the top right, you'll see a little button that says turn off video. That will just reduce the bandwidth that is being consumed by Sam's face, and you'll be able to hear a little bit better. Okie dokie. The other thing that could happen during the session is if it freezes at your end, there's a little blue button at the top right of the screen there as well, and if you click that, you can actually reload the session. If all of that fails, then please do call Redback Support, and their number is there on the screen, 1-800-733-416. We are recording this webinar, so if all else fails, please know that it will be available to you to have a look at after the session. Importantly, we couldn't present the webinars that we do present without the support of our sponsors, and tonight's webinar is brought to you by Northern Territory General Practice Education, and that is the RTP that Sam is chair of. So we thank them very much for their contribution in bringing tonight's webinar and making it all possible, and look forward to the session tonight. Now, just before we do get started, we also have the vertical and horizontal learning integration in general practice guide that has coincided with tonight's webinar, thankfully. So you can find a copy of that in your email, I believe. Everybody that signed up for tonight's session has received a copy of that in advance. And alternately, you can also find on the bottom right of your screen a little button there that says Documents. If you click on that, you'll be able to see that the vertical and horizontal integration explained webinar guide is there, as well as the literature review that was completed by GPET in 2013, as well as GPSA's Facebook, Twitter and website as further resources. Okay, a little bit about Sam. I'm sure there's a lot of you that already know Sam. Sam's been around for a very long time. We've got Dr. Sam Hurd, who is presenting tonight. Sam's from Naracoorte in South Australia. He's trained at Adelaide Uni and completed his internship at Flinders Medical Centre before riding a motorbike with his girlfriend, who now happens to be his wife, to London in 1980. He returned to the Menzies School of Health Research in Darwin in 1992 and established GP training in the Northern Territory in 1994. He's continued to work in the NT since with mixed academic e-health and clinical roles. And
you can read that.
Absolutely. But essentially, that's right. Long-term GP supervisor, and please take it away, Sam.
Thank you. Welcome everybody. I don't think it would have mattered much if you did have access to the mute button, because I'm kind of pretty hard to shut up when I get going. And they've only given me, a few minutes to talk to you about this. I'm kind of just want to be paid credit really to a lot of you who've been doing this sort of thing for a long while. I know for myself it was in 1984 that I was first had a registrar and a student in the practice, although I wasn't the supervisor. But I was one of the people setting up the practice. So it's been going on a long while, and I'm sure as long as registrars have been around, there's been medical students a long while before that. And many of you have done, I think probably much better than me in this space, and really should probably be talking about this. Why I'm pushing in a little bit, apart from having sponsorship dollars, apparently. I didn't know about that. I'm chair of the board, but I didn't know that there was any sponsorship going on, so I'm slightly embarrassed. I would have rather been subsidised by Michael Tam's RTP or something. I don't know. Anyway, we'll get going. Where I live, so we just want to make sure you understand the context. So there's no drugs involved. It's just pleasant looking out from here, and we have a nice part of the world to live in. So I'm here. Zoe Radford, who's a registrar for GPT-2 at the practice at the moment, is on as well as a presenter. She'll be speaking briefly a little bit later, but she'll also get into answering questions, just reality checks. If you think I'm being a little bit over the top, you can ask her. We'd also like to invite people in the audience, if you're doing this with medical students and registrars and you'd like to kind of have a bit of interaction, just you feel confident about what you're doing, proud of it, let's have a bit of a discussion right at the end if we can manage that. So the first challenge really is, what sort of integrator are you? Are you the great conductor that gets arcing the electricity, or you get everyone working as a team, or are you really well structured and you've got a whole lot of processes going on? So we're going to bring up a couple of polls during this seminar, just to ask you so we can get a bit of feedback on that. I've tried to capture those with pictures. If any of them feel like the way you're doing it, perhaps you'd like to answer the poll. I don't know if that poll will appear. I'm assuming that happens, and I don't see it. Anyway, we'll press on, but you may get the opportunity to do that very shortly. Oh, there it goes. So you could just while you're thinking about that, just pick which one you are. Gone back just to make sure you could see that. So can everybody see that or just me? Interesting. Okay, so it does seem like you're quite a structured group, but you also getting rid of hierarchy seems to be another part. I think all of them are necessary. There's a few of you willing to be the conductor as well, so that's nice. But structure seems to be important. I'm kind of going to probably be most challenging to the structuralists. I put integration into Google and pictures, and I picked a few that I thought were relevant and kind of how I felt sometimes. I love the apples and the oranges, and also the kids painting sort of fitted in with what we've been up to a little bit. So how learning in an integrated way, I've sort of, what are the characteristics of vertical? And it can be anything really, it doesn't have to be learning, but you're trying to control the inputs and the outputs and get the sequence right and fiddle with that, compact it down, and really get it sorted. And for me in education medicine, that's pretty much about putting it into the clinical setting as soon as you can and trying to integrate around that. And that's really where we're headed, with students having some choice. Horizontal is about scope and limits, alternative approaches. In our practice, that's kind of about other professionals, what alternatives, other science outside, so into Menzies, other people doing things, and predominantly, because we live in the Northern Territory, the internet's a major resource by a long way. And vertical integration can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. I hope that's making I'm not getting much chuckling feedback here, but could put something into the chat if you think that's funny, but I thought it was quite a nice idea just about how far we could take this. So, just so we all know again, if you could just let us know where you fit into that hierarchy. I'm calling it a hierarchy. That might be the wrong word when I'm talking about what I'm going to. So, wow, yeah, so mostly supervisors, few registrars. Some people said they're a medical student but withdrew. Oh, we've got one back again, that's nice. Okay, so almost all supervisors and a couple of others, but a smattering of the rest. Thanks for that. So I'm very much talking to my colleagues here, and the rest of you are involved as well, so I hope that'll be okay. I don't know when the poll goes away. Yeah, it's gone, okay. So you got this little bit already. I'll just really bring up this idea that FCD Health, set up by Flinders and Charles Darwin, and really we had a struggling medical program trying to place students. We had an increase to 45 registrars a year, up from 30 or so, plus ADF registrars, and not enough places. And I was a bit at a loose end, so I decided to work in this environment. I'll tell you more about that. I'm a kind of a family man thanks to my wife. It's my father's 90th birthday here in Darwin last year, and I'm kind of proudly responsible with my wife for all but 7 of the people in that photograph. So we've got a little bit of a throng going up here, U-mob as some people call us. But I have, despite working reasonably hard, got a lovely family and some wonderful grandchildren. I've got 12 grandchildren, just to set the memory straight. Okay, so Edward de Bono, it's warm in Darwin and you don't wear many clothes and there's not a lot to do sometimes and things happen. Anyway, great. What's learning? I like Edward de Bono's statement. It's about memory really, but I think you could say it's about learning as well, and just when things don't quite unhappen. But clearly, if we're really going to get people's hearts and souls and get them really driving and feeling good, then you've got to get into creativity. And we'll talk about Nicole's hierarchy in a while and where that fits in. I know Michael Tam has been pushing that idea as well. I think it's a really good one. So when I've thought about what we're doing, and I've been working on Instinct pretty much for a year and a half with quite a background of setting up, this is really the 4th training practice in my career that I've been involved in establishing, and it had to survive economically. It wasn't doing too well, so it had to do a whole lot of things at the same time, and all I've really thought about pretty much is the education and service delivery. I haven't been involved in the other things. So the fact that it's working economically and things isn't my responsibility. And I've had to retrofit my guru on this. And so Sugata Mitra is a Newcastle professor of education. Started out, you might have seen his TED Talks on holes in the wall, kids in India, groups of kids, no English, no computer skills, within 2 months speaking English with their computer in a slum with no other educational resource. And his first kind of disruptive statement is, why on earth would you examine anyone without giving them access to the internet these days? And it might make us all feel a bit sad about all the stuff in our heads, but I've got to say I'm pretty inclined to agree with him. And his kind of thing, you get this sort of warp education going on if you can get access to the internet and people working together and trying to learn together. So he's really challenging whether how we see education at the moment, is that some kind of rudimentary thing that will be left in the future and we'll be working quite differently. And finally, just how challenging is the statement that knowing might be obsolete because the information is so readily to hand. So he wants to shift everything into a self-organizing environment and letting learning happen rather than making it happen. Now, how do you do that? And if we take his idea of these self-organized learning environments, his view is that we put broadband, we need a team of people. It doesn't work for individuals. You've got to have a group of people trying to achieve the same thing, and they've got to have some encouragement. So that's the thesis that I'm retrofitting, I've got to say, to some extent, to our environment. Good internet access, everyone encouraged to use it, lots of links going out about good things, and you'll see my GP community that NTGP have set up, which I hope will add to that. Collaboration, so it's got to be people helping each other, not sitting in their rooms. So we have doors open, people aren't seeing patients, the doors open, always encouragement from each other, from the supervisors in the practice. So if we get this right, Sugata Mitra is saying all we need to do is ask the big questions. His statement, kids teach themselves. Well, if kids can teach themselves, why on earth wouldn't registrars and medical students teach themselves? So how could we integrate our education in this kind of way? And that's 5 granddaughters with their long plaits looking out into the garden. Okay, so I find it interesting. How do you get inspired as a teacher in general practice? I just wonder if we could share that together. You just click on the screen and tell us where you get your inspiration. I know it's all of these, it's all of the above in a way, but I just wonder where you see as the main source of your education. Inspiration, educational inspiration. Books are doing very, very badly. It's interesting, isn't it? And 12 of you are from doctors who taught or with whom you teach at the moment. Inspiration's picking up a little bit. Someone's managed to find a book. That's great. Because I think there are some wonderful books in this area. We've got 3 on the internet now. So pretty balanced around your current teachers, other inspirational people that you know in your life, so getting a lot from locally. Books, I think we probably need to expand, on what books might help you in this kind of space, because I think it's out there. And the internet, I think, is doing really badly. And I think I think it's a really big source of inspiration at the moment. Most things that are inspirational and people find wonderful get some kind of presence on the internet. And I've got to say now, I think I get most of my inspiration from videos, things I watch, things I read that I find off the internet. So I'm with 3 others, but I'm definitely in the blue very strongly at this stage. Thank you. Okay, so a little bit about what we're doing and where, about the organisation. I'll talk a bit about how it all works in our space, keeping that in mind. So FCD Health, it's now got a couple of clinics. We've got 35,000 people or so that we service. They drive in for an hour and a half. We're 30 k's south of Darwin, Palmerston, and we have an ambulance based with us. We take patients from an ambulance as well as send them. We don't take them very often, and we send them quite often. So we also have a Charles Darwin. We're opening another health service in town, and that's going to be for registrars who want to learn business, and they'll actually run a small sort of developmental practice in the tourist area, thinking about how they want to do their business, doing all the employment stuff, and we hope to break some new ground there. And we're going to move into more remote areas as the plan. So maybe East Timor one day. So 23 rooms, so a lot of clinical rooms. It's built, I think the architect came from Kazakhstan to build it. The corridors are about as wide as your health centre probably. And it was built obviously as part of this super clinic thing. Now you could do it for a lot less resource, but if you're going to follow this model, you need some space, that's clear. And we've got sort of the partialists down the other end with their allied health. That's, some people call them specialists, general practice and teaching area. So we've got plenty of space, but this is run, I'm the senior clinician, it's run by the administrators. I want to be clear about that. Robin Carr, who is the CEO, Amanda Wheeler, they run it. There are 3 part-time specialist GPs, so 6 to 8 sessions a week each, 2 night doctors, 2 OTDs, an independent pathway, and a couple of paediatricians. So they're the kind of key staff, and the rest are people who are earning. I'm the oldest and longest in Darwin. Chris Harnden, who's joined us, he was Dean of Rural Health at Shepparton, Head of GP Training in New Zealand, formerly with NTGPE and also UK. Sue Chambers, career GP from Bristol, whose husband's at the hospital here. Hamish Scott, ADF trained, works part-time with Indigenous Health and part-time with us. So just 4 specialist GPs. And then we have registrars and students. So I'll tell you a bit about them. But some of those people you're looking at there trained in the Northern Territory. Whatever you did then, Nicole, popped up in the middle of my screen. So what do I mean by being a specialist GP? I just mean somebody who's done their GP training and got fellowship. So just that you're not just working in general practice, but you've trained as a general practitioner and been assessed by your peers. So some kind of assessment process that gets you recognised. Hope that's okay. I'm being clear about that because we've got quite a lot of different sort of doctors working here. And some students locally, some OTD registrars, some OTDs, terrific, vibrant group of people working together. And that's kind of Darwin looks a bit like that photo really, except we've got one group missing obviously, and that's Indigenous population, which is 30% of the population. If you came into the health centre today, you would have seen some Aboriginal health workers working with us as well today. So registrars, we've got 10 full-time registrars and a few part-time. That's with, as I said, with a small number of supervisors and some OTD, 7 graduates from Australia. We've got no NT graduates this year, but we usually have. We have last year, 2014, we had 3 registrars allocated. That was my first year. That was a scary year. And this year we had 42 registrars apply to work with us. So we're full this year, and I think we're gathering momentum. So it proved to be a popular choice last year. And we've got our first advanced training position in women's health. So we've got a registrar who's already been with us a year. She's gone off that Aboriginal health. She's coming back to really set up our women's health service. as an advanced training position, and we'll be teaching students and all gender registrars. So the deal for women coming to that place will be that you'll see a male or female doctor, and you'll get bulk billed. But we're really trying to overcome this huge barrier to learning women's health and how to do a pap smear, how to put an IUD in general practice. I think we'll get there, we'll see. So students, we have 9 for 20-week placements, so they come for 5 months at a time. A couple come via clinical science. Most of them are postgraduates, so quite mature. Some have health degrees already. We have 4 students from James Cook, and we have other nursing students and Aboriginal health practitioners. We have 3 full-time nurses and a couple of part-timers as well. It's not underutilised as an education site. I think that's what I'm trying to tell you. So we've got 80,000 or so visits a year, about 15 ambulance transfers a week. We have, serious emergencies come in. We're a big building. We don't quite know what brings them in, but it's 30 k's to the hospital, and a lot of people decide to come in. So the registrars are managing anything from an acute MI to a ingrown toenail. It's the absolute full Monty. And one registrar diagnosed appendicitis correctly in the first couple of months she was working with us on 3 occasions. So I think that'll show you that there is a little bit of a skew load to the more emergency type of things, but generally it's pretty mainstream general practice. Did you diagnose TB this week and the last week? That's what I like to ask. This week I'll ask that. Okay, so just thought last Saturday morning, just to give you an idea, you guys all do Saturday mornings. What do you see? Pretty standard sort of set, but this was a reasonably messy lot. And just the way we work with a lot of registrars and not so many supervisors, if they're worried about things, they've seen people, they want us, maybe they saw them in after hours, because I hope I told you we're 24/7, so we get to review things that came in at night if registrars are worried about them. So a fair load of the morning was reviewing people that the registrars maybe got a phone call about yesterday and they wanted to be seen or they were worried about them. So we hand things over, and the registrars do that to each other as well, based on their experience and their areas of knowledge. So that kind of tends to go fairly well. How many did I know? So not so many. I've only been there a year and a half. In my surgeries now, I would know, 80 to 90%, probably even more, quite often, everybody quite often. But on a Saturday morning, as probably for you guys, if you're picking up a different sort of load, so not so many. How many did I admit? So one guy down here, 31-year-old, been vomiting all night. Normal ECG, but a pulse of 160, and we couldn't get him settled with fluids or anything. Another fellow with a broken jaw and lacerations and probable serious head injury. And a guy who'd taken most of the surface of his cornea off with some urea product for diesels. So that, again, I think for many of you in rural practice or outside the big cities, you're going to get a fair bit of that sort of stuff. Indigenous patients, how many? So 3, and that picks up during the day. On the weekends and after hours we get more Aboriginal patients, but there's a
Sorry, Sam, before you...
fair load of, I think we run at 15% during
Sorry, Sam,
normal
before you keep
hours.
going, we've got a question here, and it's
Education
about,
environment, so we're part of...
Is your super
Yep.
clinic the only practice covering that 35,000 population?
No. So when I say that, it's really from 4 in the afternoon till 8 in the morning we cover that practice. So there's, how many? There's probably 5 other practices apart from us. And a number of them are small. There's a new bulk billing. There's 2 bulk billing practices now. We don't bulk bill everybody. We bulk bill Aboriginal, elderly and children. So we're competing as an educational site against bulk billing clinics, 2 of them, and also we have this after hours load. Is that okay? So we're NTGPE, and that's owned by various organisations. I'm going to talk a little bit about my GP community. Zoe will kind of can it for you later, but we're taking some real steps trying to do that. Obviously there's the ECT visits and releases. And we have this half of 3rd year, we have the medical students, and their exams at the end of 3rd year, so they're quite focused on learning when they're with us. So my GP community, it's a private space for people to go to. It's where all the education materials and things are lodged, and you have status, you have projects, you can put pages up. The learning plan, so there's a structured learning plan for people who want to do a certain amount each week, and all the resources are available. So week 5, sexual health, so the groups can work together on those areas, look at the things that they might want. Each thing has a view resources next to it, so you can look up particular just around psychosis, but we've just keep adding all the resources into this space, and you'll see one of the sessions we run each week is addressing the topic of the week, and as everybody kind of gets together around that throughout the NT. And the resources, mostly PDFs, some videos, some other links and things like that. But this is all done in a standard way so that we can link into other educational resources as well. So that's our online community for registrars and supervisors. We have a supervisors group. We get messages, emails and things through that. So that's the background. Integration. So I've already told you how the thesis is if we put things right in the right sort of situation, learning might happen. And my experience is that learning's happening at an alarming rate in the way we're going. But we've got all these 3 different types of people present. What I'm going to say is I think anybody at any point can have a conversation about a lot of things. They'll be at different stages, but occasionally you'll find an undergraduate who's better than a registrar at some of these things or some bits of these things. Professionalism's evolving, ethics evolves, depends on the circumstances. So there's a very peer-to-peer kind of thing around a whole lot of areas. And then there's other areas where medical students might feel quite differently. And I've taken the PGPPs out of this for the moment. Time management, how the business works, billing, all that sort of thing gets into the vocational space. And then hopefully, some more creative kind of things once you've got your fellowship and you're operating in this environment. So we can have some conversations in a totally peer way. Others are focused around the point. So we're integrating some things vertically, recognizing other things. So the horizontal interests of a vocational registrar tend to be much different than for an undergraduate when we're trying to get them to concentrate on science or something, or at least make those available to them. So if we go back and think about the internet's role, I like Maslow's hierarchy, I like this drawing, which is thinking about which bits of the internet kind of support different areas, and got LinkedIn around security and everything. That sort of puts us in our employment framework or whatever. Facebook for friendship, and says sexual intimacy, I don't know about that, but Twitter, when you start getting a bit of self-esteem and confidence, you can tweet and start to put stuff out there, and then WordPress for when you're really getting creative and you're starting to put things out. I like this idea that throughout the progress through this vertical kind of space, that you can start to think about what works for what kind of person. So I only know 3 of the acronyms on the internet, but I've allocated them to each level, and I don't know for the postgraduates, but for all of us, at least somebody kind of thinks that they're feeling something like that. I'll just tell you a quick story about one of the registrars, a female registrar who came to my room and asked me to come and help her because she'd upset this patient. She was crying, she couldn't console her, and she's the sort of registrar that would use these acronyms fairly liberally and fluently. Anyway, she was sitting at her desk. The patient was sitting in the chair, and I pulled another chair up. The patient was crying. It was about the fact she'd had a pap smear and it didn't show, it was inconclusive, and the registrar was telling her that she had to have another one and she didn't want to have another one. And eventually I started to realize this woman had some serious problems about her vagina and sexuality, I don't know. And I sort of said, is this a problem for you in other ways? You know, does it interfere in other aspects of your life or something? And the registrar was sitting there kind of wondering what she was going to say, and she said that she hadn't had sex for 8 years, and sort of flood of tears. The young registrar just sort of burst of laughter behind her hand, which was a little bit shocking when I was trying to put it back together, and kind of took me another 30 minutes to get my act together. Anyway, we all thought it was rather nice that a young registrar would think that it was very unusual not to have had sex for 8 years. Anyway, that was the kind of nice message out of it. Poll. So how do you get effective use of the internet in your learning environment? Let's see what you do and what you think is helpful in that area. Obviously it's going to be all sorts of what's that? Are they the right questions? Something went wrong there. No, that's the wrong poll. Wrong poll. Take that one off. I don't know if we get it. We'll jump that one maybe. So you can put it in the chat anyway. Oh, there you go. There you go. Let's have a go again. Let's see where you're at. We've got a couple there. We've got internet access in the consulting room. Some have gone past that to encouraging, sharing, recording useful resources. Only a few are having sessions about how to use the internet effectively, and nobody's not allowing internet access. That's kind of cool. So internet access, people have got there, and I think it's time we start discussing how to use it effectively. So for students, for registrars, what are the good sources for the learning, for them to share with patients? I showed you that patient without areata. What was it? I can't think of the name. You know, when they go bald. Sorry about that. It's my dementia sneaking in. So he had a bald patch. And I went straight to the wiki page with him. We looked at pictures. We looked down the Wikipedia and we talked about this related to him. He still had some hair. Probably wasn't going to go completely bald. But look at these people that had more trouble. It didn't usually extend in that kind of way. These people had no hair at all. So he could actually Google that and not get scared because he'd been sort of taken through it in advance. And I put it to you that that's something that we can do to people. Give them the information. Let them recognise that it doesn't all apply to them. So mostly it's access, 14, 10 are starting to encourage, and 4 of you are starting to think about how you get registrars and people using the internet. So my thesis is that's where we need to be. If we're going to get vertical integration, we're going to get people on fire, we're going to get them learning, that's what we need to do. Thank you. It's going to disappear, I guess. That internet. Poll. There we go. Beautiful. Thank you. Okay, so just a little bit about the practicalities. Getting near the end. Nice cloud there. Here's our work program for last week. Is it finished? That might be this week. Last week. There you go. So let's just think about who the people are on this. So we've got a couple of night doctors at the Yard Onward Fellowship, and they do quite a lot of the nights, and they've done that for long before I came, and they pretty much hang on to that, although registrars work at night increasingly, so when there's slots available, it's well paid and people want to do it. We have 4 specialist GPs I've mentioned to you already. We have 2 OTDs on independent pathway, both doing examinations at the moment, and we have a lot of registrars. So if you add all of that up, it's a very, very sort of unusual makeup of the workforce. We also have 10 medical students, and they contribute as much as everybody else does in the sense that they see people, they work in triage, they fully clerk people who are coming in, patients like it. Our workload's gone up with the students, with more registrars. It just keeps getting more popular to come, even though we've got bulk billing clinics nearby. So I think it works commercially as well as from an education point of view. So everybody has a nominated specialist GP, a supervisor. Each student has a registrar or specialist GP on the day. They have a doctor who they know, but that varies. Anybody can ask anybody at all, anytime, for help. Talk a bit about that. We don't use the phone. We occasionally do because I might be in one room, people can't find me, or somebody else, so they ring you on your mobile, but it's just because they can't find you. Knock on the door, and we come out and we have this PDQ format, which is tell us the name of the patient so we might know them, bit of context. What do they think is going on? What do they need to know? So just keep it really crisp, and then we might go in and have a look at a rash or talk about an x-ray or talk about what they're going to do next. Quite often, you know, my door's open if we've got no patients, or we have patients. So at the moment, we have a few supervisors away, and so the patient load, we keep a full-time supervisor available all day, where you know you can just walk into the room. Sometimes there's 3 or 4 registrars in there talking about problems, helping each other, and thinking about what to do about something. Sort of helping. And also, this works around the clock. People are helping each other all day and all night, really. So PDQ for corridor consultation, face-to-face, feel it, not just giving little snippets over the phone. We have some organised sessions, so that introduction to general practice goes 6-month blocks, an hour on Friday, other bits and pieces you can read there. The registrar and inspiration session for students is another thing that's going on. Nearly to the end, just to say we do give feedback, we're honest, we expect everyone to contribute, we expect them to behave professionally, and some of them have had to face the administrators and us to get a bit of feedback, usually positive when that happens, but sometimes it hasn't been. We've really seen people pull into line, do a lot better. Everybody that we know has been pleased with the feedback and the input. Authenticity.
No, we've got a couple of questions actually. We've got
we better finish.
Sue, who's asked, so you allow them to knock on the door while you're consulting?
I do. So one of the costs to this is patients who want to see one of the senior docs, that they're going to get interrupted a bit. It's kind of understood, and people accept that they're seeing specialist GP and they're going to get interrupted, and that's just how it is. And if they don't like it, they need to go to another place, and that's where retrofitting this onto a practice may have some challenges, because on the door each registrar has a sign with which supervisor they're working, and so a lot of patients leak off to the registrar talks to us if they're worried about something, and they feel in a surrogate way as though they're attending the specialist GP. For the ones that need that overarching thing, some want continuity, they'll hang out. And
we've also got another question here, and that is how would you envisage this model working for a solo rural GP?
I would envisage it working with a few registrars and a few medical students. So I'm going to say I think you need as many medical students as registrars for this to work well. And if you have a solo, you need a locum, probably, or you might, with some senior registrars, get away with it. Certainly, I leave most days, unless I'm doing a shift or a Saturday morning, I leave 4 to 5 o'clock most days, and we have after hours, we have the senior registrars working and kind of supporting people. Everybody, the students are with the registrars all day, helping might be triaging before we see them, that kind of stuff. So it's a real mix in,
sure.
and everybody's
We've got another question
working
here
all
from...
day. Do we have PGY 1 or 2? I was going to say that about the PGY 1 or 2. We did have, but we don't now because of the change in the...
Another question here, how do you fund your supervisor time?
So we fund part of it from supervisor money. That, because we've got 12 registrars and a fair few of them are T1 and 2, GP 1 and 2, we've got a reasonable amount of resource coming in for that. And we have 10 students, so that's another lump of money, and that helps. And we definitely use some of the money that they generate as well to pay for supervisor time. We're quite a profitable non-profit in that we're expanding quite quickly. So all of this is generating sort of money if someone had invested in it would be very happy about it.
Envisage that? Yep.
Just safety quickly. Sorry, could I just because very briefly, I just put up some starting points for registrars where you think they might be in a bit of trouble. The sort of starting point we have, and I've raised a couple of them on GP Down Under and things, and people are kind of happy with that. But I think you have to have a fallback position for the registrar who's really, finding it difficult, or you think is going to find it difficult, and where you want them to alert.
Yeah, sure. We had a question about
I'll put one up for
burnout.
Students as well.
How are you going with that in your team?
Yeah.
A vision of calm.
Look at me. Whoa. Burnt. How's supervisor burnout? Yeah. No, I think it is it's a serious thing. If you think you're going to ramp this up, you have to let go of some patient time, both for the good of the learning environment and for yourself. So you have to be willing to step back a little bit from the mainstream seeing patients. So I see a lot of patients who are still very involved in a lot of patient care, that the patient, so if you're involved for a minute or two, they kind of appreciate that. They say hello, seeing everybody all the time. You probably see more patients this way than you do the other way. Burnout, you need a team. And for this many registrars, you've got to have, I think, one equivalent unpaid doctor working. It can be all of you, obviously, but the hours add up. They've got to run at about, I'm guessing, but one supervisor working without patients per 10 registrars and 10 students. So obviously that can be sessions and bits and pieces, face-to-face for lots of the registrars, that kind of thing. So medical students, confidentiality, consent and competence. How far can it go? GPET policy, integration can go way too far. I don't even want to go there. I think it's silly. This is kind of a nice statement, but what I'm really saying here is I don't think this is true. I honestly don't think you can do all this stuff and control everything and do it. And I'm arguing for the fact of just encouraging, setting it up right and letting it run and not trying to control it too much. And really everybody's talking, sharing. The collective wisdom is amazing. We have registrars who've been out for a little while, managing acute myocardial infarctions very well, sending them off to hospital. Just yesterday, one of the registrars stopped me sending someone home with type 2 heart block. I was kind of cool about it. They'd been sent home before. She's in hospital and having a pacemaker today. That kind of thing. They were just passing through the room and we were talking about it. And, that's the kind of, I benefit massively from this. The safety of the whole operation, I think, depends on that openness and sharing. So integration, I'm going to stop. I'll just cost to the practice, maybe very last thing. Obviously we need money for this in some way. We are running entirely on normal funding models. Registrars the first 3 months of GP1s, but we can get registrar GPD1s working very effectively with medical students and generating money. Students cost, Paul Worley's saying it really matters that first staying for 5 months, and I'm sure they contribute economically to our practice when they've been there for a while. I'd like to introduce Zoe, and I don't know if anybody put their hand up to have a chat with us, Glenn, but Zoe, would you like to say a few words? Zoe Radford, who's working with us, and she was talking to the registrars today to sort of see what they thought, and I hope she's going to come in and speak.
Yeah, so I'm Zoe Radford. I'm one of the GP registrars that works quite closely with Sam, and I guess from my point of view, I just wanted to put in my 2 cents worth that I came into the clinic with a fairly good understanding of how the clinic worked, having spoken to some of the registrars from last year, and have a bit of an interest in teaching and enjoy working with medical students. And I think that that's one of the things that's really important, is that it really is the registrars that end up working in the clinic end up making the clinic work. So that's the first thing that I wanted to say. And also that the supervisors are available.
Definitely.
So as Sam has mentioned, that we can knock on their door and we can talk to them. And that's really important for everyone, I think, is when you're a registrar working in a clinic, is that you do have that backup support when you need it. But at the same time, working in the clinic when we all have our doors open in between our patients, there's a lot, I guess, more from what I talk to registrars working at other clinics, there's a lot more registrar to registrar talking going on in the corridor. And having chatted to everyone today, that's what we kind of find useful, is sometimes that we just need someone else to talk things through to, or sometimes you just need to run things through with someone else, and that is available. As well as that, there is also, I guess an example from this week is that one of the junior registrars booked out half an hour of my time to put in an implant on, which they hadn't done before. So it's that sort of thing which doesn't necessarily need to be done by a supervisor, by a specialist GP, whereas you're more utilising that registrar to registrar teaching. And the same as that, you're also utilising the registrar to student teaching, which I know that I learn a lot from the postgraduate students who are physios or pharmacists and things, that works back towards me. But also I learn a lot because teaching makes me learn things quicker. When they ask me questions that I don't know the answer to, we can look it up together, and trying to explain it to students is a good way of making sure that I know my things and I understand what I'm working with. So that point of view, I think, also does work well. I guess they were the points that I wanted to make about my experience from working in the clinic. And someone has asked a question saying that there's a high turnover of registrars being through the clinic, and I think that is a very good point. Darwin as a whole has a very high turnover of doctors. So patients as a whole do find that difficult sometimes, that there is a high turnover of doctors at all clinics. And this year, I think most of the registrars are all doing 12 months terms rather than 6 months terms. And I know that at least 3 of us are staying on again next year, and some of the ones from last year are coming back. So yes, there is a turnover, but yes, there is all over Darwin. And we're trying to alleviate that, I guess, by keeping people on for longer terms during their training rather than swapping every 6 months, which is more the norm up here. So yeah, that was what I wanted to have to say.
Thanks, Zoe.
Let me know if you have any more questions.
Thank you, Zoe.
Very good. We had one other person that was interested in sharing some of her thoughts, and that was Trish. Trish, are you able to share a few words?
Oh, thanks very much, Glenn. Actually, I'd really like to thank you, Sam. That's been a wonderful presentation of integration of education and service delivery in the Darwin area, which is a difficult area to provide workforce for, and because of that, I imagine also difficult educationally. my experience in the integration of training both vertically and horizontally is more from the perspective of a regular general practice in the city of Brisbane. And we generally have a medical student. We have a GPT 1 or 2 and a 3 or 4. We have allied health in the practice. And principally, though, most of the services are provided by specialist GPs. The kind of allied health professionals that we use in our training of both the medical student and the GP registrars are a sports physio, 1 or 2 psychologists, and a clinical pharmacist, sometimes also a dietitian. And because there are quite a number of specialist GPs in the practice with different particular areas of interest, we ask them to take particular sessions on areas where they have specific interests. And I have to say, I try to attend myself as much as I can, and I'm always really impressed by and very surprised by listening to what the allied health providers present and by the depth of their knowledge in particular areas. But I'd just like to say that I think it's very good to be there if you're having allied health present, to actually be there as a sort of senior GP, if you like, just to contextualise it for the medical student and the younger registrars. And when we use other health providers, non-specialist GPs, I tend to set the broad structure of the topic and give plenty of time for them to prepare. That way they're not, I have confidence in what they're going to be speaking on, and I've never actually been disappointed. They seem really chuffed to be asked, and the medical student and the registrars seem really delighted, and the GPs likewise, those who attend are usually very delighted too. I think the issue of supervisor burnout is an interesting one, Sam, and it isn't, I think, one that only affects the more regional areas such as yours. I think it's very real wherever you practice, and to my way of thinking, spreading the load, asking all various members of the team, whether it's the practice nurse to run a session on immunisation or on wound management, or a GP with a special interest, or a sports physio, or a clinical pharmacist, or a psychologist on suicide assessment or whatever, it is a great, to my way of thinking, it really does make you feel, you as the supervisor feel quite supported, and actually lessens the tendency to burn out. So even if I might go, or one of the other supervisors might attend some of those sessions, I think it takes the load off not having to prepare it in the sort of detail that you may if you were running it yourself. So integration of education and service delivery, let's have more of it right around the country. So that's great, and I just love the way you put together the internet and collaboration and the environment to come up with a great presentation like that. Thanks very much, Sam.
Thanks, Trish.
Thanks, Trish. And I kind of stayed out of it. We do employ a dietitian. We have 4 counsellors working in practice. We have physios there each day. So that we kind of take that. But I guess where I differ, just for Trish, that's nice, and that's the space I guess I'm familiar with, is that we don't really have sessions that we prepare, and we're just trying to encourage and get things moving. And the question is, did you know, if we change things around a little bit, can that take the pressure off a lot of the supervisors? Because we're kind of letting learning happen rather than making it happen. And there's so much information out there that, you know, one of the problems is, doesn't matter how good the dietitian is, if they talk about something, within 5 seconds they can get a paper 20 times as good, read it in 10 minutes, and go for it, and then interact with the dietitian about that. Is that what you want, or whatever? You know, there's so much good stuff out there. If we can get our hands on, I just can't stop getting my hands on good stuff. I don't know what other people think, but I just find there's just such brilliant stuff out there. In fact, I don't know how many of you have got a slit lamp in your practice, but there's a slit lamp video by a guy in America. It's just a lecture he gives. I just get every registrar and student to watch that, because I've never ever seen anybody teach anything so beautifully and wonderfully. So if you look at how to use a slit lamp, you'll know if he throws a doll into the pool, you know it's the right video and it's heaven. You'll watch it from beginning to end and you'll understand how a slit lamp works, and you'll never have trouble using one again. Fantastic. So some of you, I've got one of you who's going to come and work with us. Thank you very much. I was pleased that we might get somebody. And a couple think Seoul is worth, oh no, we've got a couple more Souls going on there. Thank you. I don't know how many of you have looked at the thing. And, you know, enabling learning, I think, is a challenge. And I don't think it's about feeding information anymore. I think there's enough information there. But it's still, it's the, I guess that's the beginning of it, isn't it? That's where most of you are interested. So I hope I've given you a little bit of inspiration and might change the way you do things a little bit. Don't have to. You might be doing a lot better than we are, but we're kind of trying to do a few things differently, and I feel excited about it anyway. I'm going to present at the GP conference in Adelaide as well. Sorry, Melbourne, one of those southern cities. Anyway, thank you for coming.
Absolutely.
Glenn, do you want to...
Thanks very much, Sam, for giving up your
anything?
time this evening, and obviously to Northern Territory General Practice Education as well. We just had a couple of questions before we do knock off, and one of them was from Dennis. He asked, do your registrars have training in teaching?
Would you like to, Zoe? You get an honest answer. I don't know if she's cut off. Do they get training in teaching? It's a little bit by NTGPE. We are all working together all the time. So today at lunchtime it ended up with maybe 6 registrars talking about the medical students and the issues they've had with 1 or 2 around getting them working more effectively. So I guess the idea of teaching isn't what this is about particularly. And that might be a bit hard to accept, but it's just about learning together. And sometimes that'll be in groups, sometimes it'll be one-on-one, sometimes it'll be a few people bouncing off each other, sometimes it's one person goes away and brings it back, but we're not pushing the teaching model.
Great. Another question here was about parallel consulting. Do you do parallel consulting with the medical students in your practice?
So there's wave. I don't know quite what parallel means. Can someone define that? So the students all see patients. So they work with us. They have a room. They see the patients. We have one part of the practice where you know you're going to see a student first, but they're everywhere. There's 10 of them. They're hard to hide. So they see patients first on the whole, and sometimes we see the patient with them afterwards on the whole, and sometimes we see the patient with them afterwards. Sometimes they go on to the next patient, having had a discussion with us about the patient. All sorts of different things happen. Sometimes they bring them into us, sometimes we both go into the treatment room, sometimes whatever feels best for people. They come to the nursing home, whatever.
Yeah, sure. Another question here.
I don't know what parallel.
This is the $1 million question. How do you make having a GP registrar profitable? Everyone says it costs the practice 10 to 20k. 'K. 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 'K.
Well, you can work out we've got 3 part-time and 1 full-time doctor and 10 to 12 registrars. We're not losing money. So doing something wrong. And we've got students as well. It adds to the pressure. So I don't think student registrars are unprofitable. I think they can be for up to 3 months. We've got administrators who monitor their billing. We have billing sessions occasionally when they feel somebody's not billing enough. We can have chats with them. So we watch that as part of their training. The administration will talk with the registrar about the fact that they're not paying their way, and take that. Can't go into general practice and not pay their way. It's not going to work for them. So that's part of the whole deal.
Yeah, we've got another question here.
We don't tell them they have to see X
about,
patients an hour
video
on
replay.
or force their hand. Yeah, I like it, but we kind of, again, it's there, we have a video, I like it. Registrars don't on the whole. We do video ECT, so they do all have the experience of being videoed, but it doesn't tend to come up in this space so much. But we do sit in with each other. So NTGPE has a kind of notion of sitting in quite a lot. So I had a meeting with this registrar this afternoon. His time, he chose to watch me working to see a complex psychiatric patient with me. Could have done something different. I sit in with the registrar during that hour quite often. So if that's somebody, they can book them in at a time, get me to sit in with them or whatever. So there's a lot of scrutiny of each other's practice. But video doesn't tend to get up. Now, I think if we could get a registrar who we propose that they should, the uptake isn't high. So, I agree that's
really
a really
interesting comment here.
Good area. I love
with Zoe as well, who's saying that students also ask registrars questions that they're not comfortable or confident in
absolutely behind
a specialist GP. So that's a good insight from somebody on the inside there.
Definitely that stuff happens a lot. And that's your vertical integration payoff, isn't it? When you start to get that happening. And registrars learning how to work effectively with medical students, because at the beginning it seems to slow them down, and after a while they realise it doesn't have to slow you down if the student's getting their sleeves rolled up.
I think we've reached our time there tonight. So once again, thanks very much, Sam and Zoe, for coming along tonight, and also your contribution there, Trish. And for all of you that were able to make tonight, really great to have you, and for all of the really thoughtful chat comments. Anything that didn't get answered tonight, we will certainly consult with Sam and Zoe and other content specialists, and make sure that everybody gets an answer in our frequently asked questions that will follow on from this particular webinar. Sorry, Sam?
That's one red one I just answered.
Rightio. So thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you again at a future webinar. Thanks, Sam.